maraming salamat po. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. My name is Chris Monterola. And for my presentation today, I will be tackling on three things. The first one is the science of data. And how is this related to some of the things that Dr. Cornelio mentioned kanina sa talk niya. A good portion of my presentation will be the applications of this in government and industry. At the end of the day, lahat po ng ginagawa natin sa industry and government, it deals with people, human being, tao. No? At pagdating sa gobyerno, it is how to impact their lives. Pagdating sa industry, how to make their lives better. And finally, very briefly po, i-introduce ko sa inyo yung recently launched na National AI Roadmap kung saan kasama namin sa mga tumulong sa pagkagawa nito si National Scientist Raul Pabella. Okay po, let me start with this particular component, Industry 4.0 and the science of data. Ano po ba ang mga puwersa na nararamdaman ng buong mundo ngayon, especially pagdating sa education ninyo, especially pagdating sa papaano hinuhubog ang iba't ibang individual na nabubuhay sa panahon na ito. And my argument po is that it is actually based on the following technological trends. One, we are producing a lot of data because we are producing a lot of smart devices. We talk of smartphones, smart cities, smart cars. And at the end, at the middle of all this is what the so-called sensors. Sensors that are producing a lot of data. Ganito po nagre-react ang mga tao. Sa loob ng isang segundo, about 9,400 tweets are being sent. This is on March 14, data na nakolekta ko noong March 14, 2021. About 113 gigabytes of internet traffic is produced. More than 90,000 Google searches produced. 3 million emails sent, isang segundo. In one day, the total amount of email sent is more than 129 billion. 18 times po greater than the total population of the world. No? Marami dyan, of course, ay spam mail. And in the last few years, a greatest source of both the energy consumption and pollution are actually not mechanical devices, kundi pagkuha ng information. Sa loob ng isang araw, 2 milyong smartphones po ang nabebenta. And we use electricity, dahil nga among others itong tinatawag na Bitcoin, ng more than 2.1 million megawatt hour ang nagagamit natin sa energy. And there are more, we are using more energy in getting information than actually using it for mechanical purposes. Because of this, we are now in an era where the total amount of data in the last 2 decades, nakikita natin that they refer to this as data deluge. Every 2 to 3 years, we multiply the amount of data that we have by 9 to 10 times. Or another way of looking at this is that the total amount of data that we have now, 90% of them is produced in the last 2 to 3 years. The combination of this, producing a lot of data. So marami po sa inyo siguro na mga teachers, especially alam pa itong mga devices na to. No? In 1981, we have this 1/4 floppy drive disk. It can store 1.4 megabyte of information. Pero ang magandang balita, marami tayong napuproduce na data at itong mga data na to nai-store na rin. No? It is common now to see a 2 terabyte hard disk, something that you can bring anywhere. And this is 1.4 million times compared to the size of the data hard drive that we have in the 80s and in the 90s. And at the same time, the amount of data, the cost of storing this data becomes cheaper and cheaper. In 1970s, para makapag-store ka po ng 1 megabyte of data, kailangan mong gumastos ng 1 million USD. Ngayon, 10 to the negative 5 USD or nag-decrease ang presyo ng 10 to the 11 or 1 followed by 11 zeros. Ganon kalaki. Exponentially nagmumura, exponentially lumalaki ang kaya nating i-store na data, and exponentially bumibilis din ang mga ginagamit nating pang-crunch ng data. You are looking here at the first supercomputer that was first housed in NASA, created by IBM. The cost of this is $6 million US. The dimension of this is it's bigger than a bus, and the weight of this is 30 tons. An old model of iPhone 7 will allow you to do 25 billion operations per second. typically we need 2 to 3 seconds to perform an addition or a subtraction. No? This is 5,000 times faster than that. But an iPhone 7 can do 25 billion of such operation in 1 second. And that is a factor of 5 million compared to the supercomputer shown here. Now, this is the point of the so-called Industry 4.0. We are producing a lot of data that can now be stored, and the powerful computers can crunch this information, so that ideas, paradigms, business models, and innovation is not just happening. They are accelerating. They are accelerating. At ito po ang challenge sa generation ng mga gagraduate ngayon. Habang ang lifespan natin, except for this year, continuously nag-i-increase, ang haba na pwedeng mag-stay ang isang company, the lifespan of a company decreased significantly because of disruption. In 1937, S&P 500 companies, these are the top 500 companies in the US, based in the, it's mostly international companies, based on market capitalization, can stay afloat for 75 years. Ngayon po, it can only stay for 12 to 15 years. Which means, okay, if you do the mathematics and there are 40 years ng buhay ninyo, na mabubuhay kayo, about 3 to 4 jobs ang kailangan ninyong hanapin, not because you want to move from one job to another, but because you have to, because this company might not be afloat within your life. And one of the things that influences significantly this transformation is artificial intelligence, or AI. In 2017, they forecasted that by 2022, the total impact of artificial intelligence on offerings and processes will be about 60%. 2021 now, the number is actually 70%. And they made another forecast in 2019, put it at 93%. Which is, I think, a very meaningful forecast. No? In fact, the technology with the greatest impact, because it tries to understand human behavior, it helps in human behavior, is AI, artificial intelligence. This is the so-called ABC of technology in innovation. And that A is artificial intelligence. The other B and C is blockchain technology and cloud computing. But 70% of the changes that we expect will happen in the industry is driven by artificial intelligence. It is expected to add up to $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030. But I think the more interesting number is $92 billion uplift to the Philippine GDP. This is about 12% of the GDP that is expected to happen in 2030. Ganito po ang potential ng impact ng artificial intelligence kahit sa Pilipinas. No? Having said this, okay, ipapakita ko po ang iba't ibang data science applications sa government and industry in the next 5 to 7 minutes. Gusto ko lang pong sabihin na at the end, at the core of both the industry and government agencies are people. Kailangan nating maintindihan ano ang gusto ng tao, ano ang aspirations ng tao. That is the purpose of both the industry and the government, to understand people. And now we have a better way of understanding this because of data. We now know how people are connected. We know that you can see China and Russia is not here because they do not have Facebook. We have a better understanding of how people interact with existing institutions. You are seeing here the data of the people withdrawing ATMs in Barcelona. So makikita natin paano, nasaan ang wealth, nasaan ang pera, nasaan gumagalaw ang mga tao sa kahit na anong panahon. We have a better understanding of how people are moving. So we are seeing here the flow of people in UK airport, no? And especially during the pandemic, because of these contact tracing apps, we know more precisely where the people are at any point in time. And what are the movement of people will tell you about their level of aspirations. And because of this, we now have a better understanding of how diseases, gossips, and information propagate. The pandemic that we are experiencing now, in terms of spreading, is actually way less compared to what happened in the 1910, the Spanish flu, 1906, 1910 Spanish flu, and it's precisely because of our better understanding of the movement of people. We now have a better understanding of the nature of human because of this data, and we do not need to make a hypothesis. Dr. Cornelio pointed this out. Sometimes the truth is not what it seems. and you don't create, not creating a hypothesis, being driven by the data that you have and understanding that different culture, different constraints play a role in the movement of people, in the behavior of people. Okay, that is one thing that artificial intelligence and data science can help. And it's exactly precisely because of this, I will now be showing some of the artificial intelligence applications as seen in government and industries. So this is based on some of the projects that we have done with different industries. But before that, let me mention again this, that 70+% of innovation, and this is all about value creation for the people, is driven by data science and an entrepreneurship mindset. I'm not making this up. In fact, if you try to look at the most innovative companies globally, okay, Google, Amazon, Netflix, DBS, Apple, LinkedIn, Facebook, they are driven by someone who understands data and at the same time has a better understanding of human behavior. These are entrepreneurs who drive their understanding of human behavior by looking at data. Page and Brin, Bezos, mamaya sa open forum po, I can discuss paano nila pinalaki ang kanilang company, ano ang vision nila, anong na-realize nila na meron ng tao na hindi ganun yung ini-imagine natin. Again, conformity with Dr. Cornelius' earlier points. And in fact, data literacy and data science becomes one of the driving force sa economic hiring, especially during the pandemic. October last year po, ang data scientist is now in the Philippines more valued than doctors and lawyers. Sila na may pinakamalaking sweldo, and this trend is not just true in the Philippines, but this trend is also true globally. So this is the world that we are living in, looking at data. Examples po, this is a work that we've done with Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. As you all know, it's a regulatory body and their main purpose is to actually regulate more than 500 financial institutions every month. They do this by looking at the checklist, more than 2,000 records, and they will be spending 40 man-hours per record and multiply that by 500, that will be equivalent to 20,000 man-hours. Through AI, data science, and network science, we reduce this amount of time to just 11 minutes. That is a 99.99% reduction in process. This is a work that we've done with Manila Water. The problem here is to forecast water level of Angat Dam, which supplies more than 90% of the water level in Metro Manila. Previously, they can do this in 2 weeks, but now we can do this in 6 months. So as you can see, hindi na po tayo masyado nagkakaroon ng water shortage nito sa Angat Dam kasi pag matagal ang kaya mong i-forecast, kaya mong maggawa ng intervention. Pag kulang ang tubig, ang magic number po ng Angat Dam is 180 to 220 meters. Pag kulang ng tubig at walang ulan, there will be water shortage. And if the water level is too high and there's a lot of rainfall, okay, we can lose lives because of the flash flood. So ito po yung reason why do you want to forecast this way ahead of time. This is a work that we've done with one of the bigger agri company in the country. And their problem is to forecast spoilage. No? We help them using artificial intelligence. They have more than 60 territories. They covered more than 60 territories with more than 300 products. And by simply understanding the supply and demand, ano kailan bumibili ang mga tao ng pagkain ng kanilang mga hayop at sa mga iba't ibang area, at anong nagtitrigger dito, we were able to reduce spoilage o yung spoilage of the different animal feeds by about 100 million. Another work that we've done, and this is again, interesting ang idea ng psychology ng tao, no? Machine-human interaction. This company, one of the biggest multinational company in the country, in fact, their device is present in more than 90%. In one specific device is more than present into more than 90% of the population globally. One of their biggest problem is understanding machine and human interaction. They bought machines that can cost up to $500,000 per machine, and they have hundreds of that machine. But the greatest source of disruption is the interaction of machine and human. So we try to understand this, and for just 10 products, and they have hundreds of products, we were able to save them 75 million. Okay, again, using data. How actually humans behave at different times of the days, for example, and how do they interact with machine. Another problem is human capacity. Okay, this is very important during this time. Understanding how long will an individual stay in a hospital. Importante po ito lalo na ngayon na kinukulang tayo sa capacity dahil sa pandemic. We work with one of the biggest Asian pharmaceutical company who owns at the same time several hospitals. And yes, this is quite recent. No, this is a work that we've done in contact tracing para maintindihan po natin ma-lessen ang spread ng pandemic na COVID-19. Sabi nga nila ang isa sa weakest link ng response natin sa Pilipinas is yung tinatawag na contact tracing. But here we not only identify those individuals who are vulnerable to COVID-19, but at the same time those who are super spreaders. Yung may potential na maging super spreader. At ang total number po ng kayang impluwensyahan ng super spreader is actually 1,000 times greater than a regular spreader. So kailangan nating ma-pinpoint kung sino itong mga super spreader na to. So using data science and AI, we can actually understand this individual. And this was launched in 4 cities already in Metro Manila. In education, no, it is transforming the way we do things. Ito po yung mga iba sa mga naging partners namin, and this is for capstone ng mga estudyante. And we were able to give them $40 million annual improvement in revenue. Ang nagsasabi po ng number na to is actually the C-level executives, the CFO specifically of these different companies. Pinapasok na rin niya ang tungkol sa art. Isa po ito sa pwede niyong gawin with artificial intelligence. Painting ni Amor Solo, mukha ko, pwedeng pagsamahin at pwede pong paglaruan yung mga ganyan. No? Or automation on coloring. So naapektuhan na po nito paano na tayo gumagawa ng mga artworks natin sa school or even video. Automatic video creation. Inaasahan po natin na itong mga ito ay magiging natural na sa bayan natin, sa education natin to have artificial intelligence in that. And yes, the data science is now changing even companies. You are seeing here one of the biggest conglomerate in the country, the Ayala Group. And you are looking here at all the business units, heads. This is in their MANCOM meeting. Nasa likod ko po ang currently naging presidente na ng BPI, si TG Limcao ko. And dito si Jasa, ang head ng Globe, si Ernest ko. Sinasabi ko lang po sa picture na to, ang mga geeks na tumitingin sa data, pinapakinggan po ngayon ng maraming tao sa industry. And finally, I would like to end my presentation by mentioning about the National AI Roadmap. At this point in time, there is nothing that I can imagine where artificial intelligence applications is not felt. Lahat po ng bagay nagkakaroon na ng nalalagyan ng AI na iintindihan natin ang maraming bagay at mas magiging magandang gamit natin sa mga bagay na ito dahil sa artificial intelligence. In fact, while previously government sees the strength of the army or oil as their nation-defining capability, at the current time, AI is the one that defines one's nation's capability. And it is because of this why we have created the National AI Roadmap led by that DTI. Magkaroon po tayo ng idea paano magkakaroon ng access sa data, sa infrastructure, computer resources, ang bawat isa sa Pilipinas. Mga high schools, elementary, etc. Paano po mangyayari yon? So, isa po tayo sa top 50 na country sa buong mundo na nagkaroon ng ganitong klase ng roadmap. No? And sinimulan po natin ito noong November 2019. Nilance po natin ito actually 2 weeks ago. And ito po yung ilan sa mga strategic tasks. You can download this idea, but it has 4 dimensions. Maggawa ng mas mabuting infrastructure, intindihin ang regulation, dito lalong papasok ang mga social scientists, ang ethics ng artificial intelligence, ang research and development, and of course, yung tinatawag natin na workforce development. Kailangan nating maintindihan ano yung mga dapat nating i-target na individual na magbe-benefit ang ating mga kababayan pagdating sa AI. At ang isa sa center po ng roadmap na ito is a creation of an NCARE that will be funded by a good portion of which will be funded by the private sector, not the public sector. So NCARE stands for National Center for AI Research. At malaking-malaki po ang importansya dito ng mga social scientists. Dahil again, at the end of the day, this is all about people. When you talk of smart city, it's all about people. When you talk of smart university, It's about understanding the aspirations of our students. The center of anything, public, private, and anything is all about people. And unfortunately, Newton's first law, naintindahan natin ang pinakamaliit, ang pinakamalayo, ang pinakamalaki, pero ang pinakamahirap maintindihan ay ang ating sarili. No? Kaya kong buhatin ang phone na to, kaya kong buhatin ng ibang tao, pero hindi nyo kayang buhatin ng inyong sarili. You can only impact the people, you can only understand, and the greatest wisdom normally is understanding human nature. Two of the Nobel laureates in the last 5 years in economics is actually about this, no, yung tinatawag na behavioral economics, Thaler and Kahneman, understanding human nature. So ito po yung mga kasama natin sa mga nakausap natin na ilan sa dito sa National AI Roadmap, kasama si National Scientist Pabella. At ito po ay galing sa iba't ibang agency led by DTI. No, lahat ng agency nakikita natin dito, DOF, DOST, DepEd, TESDA, DOLE, etc. Well, with that, again, maraming salamat po. Thank you so much, Rico.